Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. Finance Chief Ralph Recto is unfazed by U.S. President Donald Trump's digital tariff threat. The executive director of the Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board, Herbert Matienzo, resigns amid the flood control controversy. And Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon says flood control contractor Wawao Builders will be permanently blacklisted. Wall Street ends mixed with tech stocks lifted after a U.S. judge blocked moves to break up Google parent Alphabet. Investor sentiment also brightened on hopes the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates this month.
I think what we're seeing really is the market kind of treading water ahead of hopefully a rate cut coming to us in a couple of weeks. But the impetus behind that rate cut is going to be a really important part of the discussion. Is this because we're actually winning the war against inflation? Or could the motive be a little bit more suspicious to markets in that growth is slowing? And part of that showed up today in the JOLTS report, where we actually saw a meaningful reduction in the amount of open jobs that were available for employees searching for new work. So that kind of is a signal that growth might be slowing. And the reason we get a rate cut might not be the one the market has priced in at the moment.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended flat with a slight downturn, while the S&P 500 gained 0.5% and the Nasdaq rose 1%. In Europe, markets closed higher. London's FTSE climbed 0.7%, Germany's DAX added 0.5%, and France's CAC 40 up by 0.9%. Here at home, Finance Chief Ralph Recto downplays U.S. President Donald Trump's latest warning on digital taxes, even as Manila is already feeling the impact of the new U.S. tariffs. Recto says he doesn't give much weight to the remarks when he was asked if he sees them as an empty threat. Last week, Trump posted on Truth Social that he would impose substantial tariffs on exports from countries that enact digital taxes or policies seen to discriminate against American tech firms. The U.S. has already slapped a 19% reciprocal tariff on Philippine exports effective August 7th, while the Philippines has pledged to remove tariffs on U.S.-made cars and other goods. Recto clarifies, however, that there is still no agreement with the United States on the implementation of zero tariffs for American imports. Online gaming is PAGCOR's top cash cow, generating 69 billion pesos in license fees in just 7 months. A crucial stream as the government grapples with a widening budget deficit. In a report to the House Committee on Games and Amusements, PAGCOR Chairman and CEO Alejandro Tenco said 41 billion pesos came from electronic games, while other online offerings contributed 28 billion pesos. PAGCOR says the funds help fuel nation-building programs, including education, healthcare, and community development. The Trade Department is moving to clean up the construction sector as the head of the Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board steps down. Trade Secretary Cristina Roque says Herbert Matienzo resigned for personal reasons. This comes after she announced that both the Construction Industry Association of the Philippines and the Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board, or PCAB, will now be under her direct supervision. Roque says the shakeup is aimed at restoring integrity and transparency following allegations of conflicts of interest and irregularities. The DTI plans a full investigation into PCAB and vows to hold accountable anyone found involved in wrongdoing. A crucial move as billions of pesos in infrastructure contracts pass through the board. Customs authorities have seized luxury vehicles linked to contractor Sara Diskaya and Pacifico Diskaya, with 8 out of 12 cars showing no records of entry into the country. Customs Commissioner Ariel Nepomuceno says the high-end vehicles are now under investigation to verify their legal status. He emphasized that any findings must withstand court scrutiny if charges are filed. The Bureau of Customs is also seeking a search warrant for other luxury cars belonging to the Diskaya family. Sara Discaya, for her part, claims that the family owns only 28 vehicles in total. The clock is ticking. The government has just 2 weeks to clean up the 2026 Public Works budget amid alleged double entries and inconsistencies. After President Marcos ordered a review, Budget Secretary Amenah Pangandaman and Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon committed to wrapping up the task within 14 days. Dizon agreed with Pangandaman on the timeline, stressing that getting the budget right is crucial as it impacts the entire government. The review will focus on projects flagged by Congress, with any revisions to be submitted back to lawmakers. Pangandaman said the final budget may be trimmed, but is confident that it can be completed on time. While a reenacted budget remains an option, both officials warned of the economic risks of delays and vowed to fast-track the process to keep the economy on track. Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon is in Plaridel, Bulacan today inspecting a flood control project now under fire. The project, built by Wawao Builders along the Angat River, was supposed to be completed in June of 2024. But despite its 96 million peso price tag, it remains unfinished. Secretary Dizon warned that the company will be permanently blacklisted. During a recent Senate hearing on flood control projects, Wawao Builders General Manager Mark Alan Arevalo angered lawmakers after he neither confirmed nor denied whether his firm was involved in ghost projects. On another front, budget wars escalate. House Deputy Speaker Janet Garin is calling for the return of the 6.793 trillion peso 2026 national budget to the DBM amid allegations of ghost and substandard flood control projects. Garin claims that the budget includes suspiciously coded numbers across multiple locations, possible insertions that she says were approved by the Budget Department. She also said former DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan admitted to the existence of these ghost projects, including some visited by the president.
Because Secretary Bonoan admitted it. Kasi yun nga yung point ng iniimbestiga namin. I asked him the 2 projects that the president visited. Can you confirm that these are ghost projects? And he said yes. These were already listed when DBM submitted the budget to Congress, meaning it's an agency initiative.
Garin stressed that not all responsibility lies with Congress, warning that there may be other invisible enablers behind the irregularities. The DBM has yet to respond to the claims. The Bangko Sentral says the economy is in a sweet spot, with inflation well within target, banks solid, and reserves topping $100 billion. But growth is lagging at just 5.4% in the first half of the year. The deficit has swelled past 780 billion pesos, and as much as 119 billion pesos may have been lost to questionable projects. So is this really a sweet spot, or are we at risk of unraveling? To help make sense of the bigger picture, we're joined by former BSP Deputy Governor Diwa Gunigundo. Good morning, sir, and thank you for being here with us.
Hi, good morning, Maiki, and thank you for this invitation.
Okay, sir, let's get to it. The BSP governor says the economy is in a sweet spot. Low inflation, moderate growth. Do you agree?
Well, I agree with the BSP's sweet spot as far as low inflation, strong and stable banks, and ample reserves are concerned. In short, I think the BSP enjoys substantial monetary space. But these are the basic deliverables of the BSP, and therefore one can say that the BSP is doing its job. However, that sweet spot could have been sweeter if the growth numbers are more robust. They should be more robust. Okay, the first semester of 2025 saw growth slowing down to about 5.4% compared to the lower end of the target of the government of 5.5. The range is 5.5 to 6.5%. I mean, it could have been higher, and that could have made the sweet spot even sweeter. At the same time, we should also be concerned with the dwindling fiscal space our fiscal deficit averaged around 1.5 trillion pesos every year. And for the first 7 months of the year alone, we had about 784 billion in fiscal deficit. So that would be around 5.7% of GDP, the same level as the whole year of 2024. Again, how do we finance the deficit? Then either we impose higher taxes or we borrow more. But our level of NG debt is already very high at 17.3 billion or around 63% of GDP. So in other words, we could have been enjoying a sweeter spot if these numbers have been better, have been more favorable than what the numbers suggest at this point.
Yeah, we could have been in a sweeter spot. The goal is 6 to 7%. That has been but it seems harder and harder to reach. Right now, we're at 5.4% in the first half. Apart from corruption, of course, what's holding us back, sir?
Well, what are the numbers? Well, in terms of demand for the first semester of 2025, private household consumption and government spending actually expanded during the first semester. But this was not enough to provide a more substantial counterweight to the sharp slowdown in private investment. And you know, private investment means more production, more employment, more sources of livelihood for our people. And private consumption, as it is, could have been stalled by still elevated consumer prices, even as inflation had been effectively reined in. On the other hand, government spending, as we witnessed in recent events, was not as potent as one would expect, precisely because public funds were not entirely going to their budgeted allocations, especially on infrastructure and flood control. Now, by production sector, we see that while agriculture turned around in the first semester, positively meaning that means industry and services both lost some steam. For me, it's bad governance, weak trust and confidence by investors, even as the government continues to pursue strategic public policy reforms. We have to have a more effective blueprint of government.
Okay, sir, you mentioned a lot of things. Let's break them down. Let's talk about inflation. Inflation has been reined in because our growth has been moderate. What does this tell you about our trajectory, especially as the BSP is in the middle of an easing cycle, which some analysts see continuing up until 2026?
Well, inflation for the first 7 months of the year was more than benign. The average was 1.7%. And the forecast of the BSP continues to be equally benign, 3.3% for 2026 and 3.4% for 2027. However, there are price risks or upside risks in the horizon. Number one, we see the 2-month import ban on rice. Now, that could have the effect of pushing up rice prices, and we know that rice accounts for 8.9% of the total consumer basket. So if something happens to rice prices, that could have a very substantial effect on the average consumer price index. That's one. Second, it is also possible down the line, because of issues about fiscal sustainability, the tariff could be adjusted from 15 to, again, back to 35%. Again, this is something that could also affect price levels of rice. On top of that, we expect some adjustments in the power rates. Higher generation, power generation. So NPC is petitioning for a higher rate, higher transmission by the NGCP, and of course, a higher cost of distribution by Meralco. So if we factor this in and include also unfavorable global trade, which could be affected by Trump's uncertain tariff decisions, well, that could have the effect of pushing further the inflation forecast for 2026 and 2027. And that could have an important impact on the easing policy of the BSP.
Yeah, a lot to calibrate. While inflation is well within target, there are price risks ahead, especially in the form of rice, power, and of course, global trade. Talking about our fiscal health, sir, the budget deficit hit 784 billion in the first 7 months of the year. That's an increase of 22%. That seems pretty quick. Are you concerned, or how concerned are you about the pace and the trajectory, this steep incline?
Well, yes, Mikey, I will be personally worried given the path of the fiscal deficit and the level of government debt at this point. I was saying earlier that we normally have a 1.5 trillion peso fiscal deficit, or about 5 to 6% of GDP. And to finance that, we have to borrow more. And that is where my worry lies, actually. Unless we're able to impose fiscal discipline, okay, and good governance in both the budget process and project execution, it is likely that we would be seeing higher fiscal shortfall and higher debt, if not accompanied by higher taxes. Annual debt service last year was already high at 2 trillion pesos. Imagine, 2 trillion pesos. And for the first 7 months of 2025, debt servicing alone stood at 876 billion, or around 1.5 trillion by the end of this year. Well, that's about 22% of our 6.9 trillion budget proposed for next year.
Interest plus principal, that's a huge chunk of our budget already.
That's right, Mikey. Yeah. That's right.
And as we talk about all of this, corruption issues are taking center stage. Secretary Ralph Recto just said that he estimates that ghost flood control projects may have cost the country 119 billion pesos, equivalent to 266,000 jobs. How damaging would you say this is to our growth trajectory, sir?
Well, I have no way of validating those numbers, Mikey, but at face value, that many jobs, 266,000, could have reduced both unemployment and underemployment statistics in the Philippines. And that could have added more to livelihood and private consumption. And in turn, that would have driven more momentum for economic growth.
Yeah.
I think and I believe that better financial management and good governance at the top and in Congress could have avoided this great scandal in executing government projects. That has the effect of eroding public trust and confidence in our elected government.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of erosion of public trust in the government, the 2025 budget is being called the most corrupt in years. This is infringing on our ability to spend on things with high multiplier effects like infrastructure, education, health, agriculture. What does this tell you about where we are at this junction, sir?
Well, it was called the most corrupt budget precisely because there were unconscionable congressional insertions that resulted in most critical priority projects of government in public health, public education, social infrastructure being deprioritized in favor of less socially beneficial, but definitely more profitable for some politicians and private contractors. That's very sad. Second, the budget and the subsidy for PhilHealth were also withheld. Thus, PhilHealth failed to increase the coverage of the Filipino people and to cover more types of health issues. And less public hospitals were built and less hospital beds were made available. Okay? That is bad for human capital development. And on top of that, public education could have been enhanced if better training was given to teachers. More teachers could have been hired, more classrooms could have been built. Now, this involves human capital development to ensure good quality leaders and workforce in the next decades or so. Mm-hmm. We could have also innovated through higher budget in the absence of those congressional insertions, okay, for research and development. Better weather forecasting instruments could have been procured. Better and stronger military could have been produced. Instead, the budget for unconditional transfer was bloated for election purposes, and those public resources were also allegedly stolen by some officials. So we could have grown more, Mikey. We could have funded more social amelioration projects to equip our next generation of leaders. And that actually affected our capacity to grow in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Another thing, in its latest ratings review, Moody's kept our ratings stable. Reading between the lines, sir, what does that mean? Does that necessarily mean that the bias over the next 12 to 18 months is tilted to the downside? Because they didn't say positive.
Well, if we look at the reasons why Moody's kept our rating stable, they cited our efforts in pursuing economic reforms. And they were also saying that some of the fiscal indicators actually improved. However, they also took notice of the fact that growth was below targets. Now, our rating now is Baa2, which is investment grade. However, it is the minimum investment grade. Okay, and the stable outlook was due precisely to these efforts at economic liberalization, fiscal consolidation, and robust macroeconomic fundamentals. If we fail in the next 12 months of the year to pursue economic liberalization, if we fail to consolidate our fiscal balances and fail to show a sustained macroeconomic fundamentals, a positive outlook could also mean a downgrade. Okay? However, if we are able to sustain them in all of those three fronts, that could have that could translate into an upgrade. So it's up to us. It's up to government. It's up to the private sector to make a difference and turn that stable outlook into a positive outlook, which could presage a possible upgrade to a higher level of investment rating.
Yeah, that's the target. That's where we all want to go. But in the meantime, flood control scandals are dominating the news. The PSC index fell to the 6,000 level yesterday. Right now, we're back at 6,100 level. But of course, investor confidence has taken a hit. How much? Of course, you don't have the figures, but just your guesstimate. How much would you say all these corruption scandals with the flood control? By how much has it eroded investor confidence locally and from foreign investors?
Well, it's not only the issue of the flood control anomaly, Mikey. That would also include the issue about impeachment, okay? Because all of this raised the issue of rule of law, okay? The issue of justice, the issue of good governance. And therefore, flood control scandal is just about the same thing, corruption and bad governance. Now, if you read a recent IMF study, as quoted in the press, it shows that if the level of corruption in the Philippines could be reduced to that of Singapore, investment to GDP ratio could rise by some 6.6 percentage points. And annual per capita GDP growth could increase by 1.65%. Now that is great, no? That is great. If we are just able to moderate or control greed, okay, in the execution of public works projects, that could translate into lower poverty, lower income, an equal distribution of income. That could also translate into more public works projects for the benefit of our people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, sir. As
And
we,
a cautionary tale is what is happening in Indonesia. No, there are also hostilities in Thailand and Myanmar. So those are cautionary tales. There could be a tipping point, no, to all of this. The
yeah.
people are beginning to see what is happening behind those budget process and execution of public works project.
Yeah, but at the same time, as it happens in other countries, taking a look at our local bursts, we're losing steam so much that trading value is stuck at the bottom of the ASEAN.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, it's happening to a crazy degree here at home. Regulators, we have this story coming up, but I'll tell you a little bit about it now. Regulators are warning that online gambling is stealing market interest. What does this say about the state of our capital markets, sir?
Well, number one, and no one can deny this, our capital market is very shallow. If our capital markets could have been as deep and as developed as that of Malaysia and Thailand, I mean, we can easily weather all of these global and domestic shocks, because the issue of a more developed capital market is the stability of funds to finance government projects, private sector projects, and that could mean a better framework, a better infrastructure for a more sustained and more inclusive economic growth. But if more people are going in, that would defeat the very purpose of the capital markets.
Okay, sir. Stability and governance are really integral here, and we need to hold people accountable for the budget insertions and for the ghost projects. And we need real consequences and not just investigations. That said, sir, do you trust Congress and the Senate to enforce accountability?
Well, first of all, Mikey, I would like to suggest that both the House and the Senate should continue their public hearing and investigation. But I would also suggest that let's not keep our hopes very, very high, because it looks like, on the basis of the findings so far, some of their own are involved in the anomalous flood control projects. And that means that the investigation or public hearing may be conflicted, because some of those who are involved and some of those who are concerned, and they could be the same people who are doing the investigation, should be held accountable, and therefore they should also respond to questions of their own. So it is something that both houses of Congress should think about, and also the president.
We lost.
This independent investigative council.
Yes.
And I hope the president will be able to appoint independent people of integrity, people of competence and skills, both in the law, in governance, in financial management, to be able to show to the people that there is rule of law in the Philippines, that we uphold justice here in the Philippines, we are more transparent, and we hold everyone accountable.
Yes, that's right. President Marcos says that he will issue an executive order to establish an independent body to investigate the flood control anomalies, because, as you said, some of their own may be involved. But the question is, who to put on it? Broadly speaking, how would you describe the ideal candidates for this? Without naming names, I know you can't.
I'm not sure if I'm in a position to, to identify or even to give some hint. No,
just broadly speaking, sir.
Well, perhaps some of the more independent folk.
Okay, we're going to be taking a quick break. We lost audio over there. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. The local bourse is losing steam. Trading value is stuck at the bottom of ASEAN, and even regulators warn online gambling is stealing market interest. Soojin Kim has the details.
In Philippines is the first stock exchange in Asia. And it is very unfortunate that Vietnam has already overtaken us.
The Philippines is facing a capital market crisis, with trading activity stuck at the bottom of the ASEAN rankings. Data from the ASEAN markets show the country's monthly trading value at just $3.2 billion as of July, the lowest in the region and far behind regional peers. Vietnam has surged to $34.1 billion, followed closely by Thailand at $27.4 billion and Singapore at $26.3 billion. The local index has been trapped between 6,000 to 6,500.
We have stagnated at that figure.
A sign of structural weakness and inability to attract sustained investor interest. One factor blamed for this decline is online gambling.
Ang kompetensya ngayon ng investment sa stock market is gambling. The gambling sector is actually competing and actually beating the stock exchange. Kasi sa stock exchange, you have to establish an account.
Commissioner Quevedo says the SEC was one of the first to recommend cutting off the gambling sites' access to e-wallets to help direct funds back into the capital markets. Commissioner Quevedo is also advocating for the possible listing of government-owned and controlled corporations at the PSE and the strict enforcement of the 20% public float requirement for companies.
That's one of the ways wherein we can stimulate the capital market. If we can amend the charter by law or by executive order.
By 2026, the SEC will fully enforce term limits for independent directors, removing any loopholes that allowed companies to evade the 10-year rule.
So, I think by 2026, wala na yung explain. It will just be comply with the term limit of 9 years.
The SEC is also set to require that at least 20% of board members in listed firms be independent directors, a move aimed at strengthening corporate governance and investor confidence. Soojin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Speaking of the capital markets, let's take a look at how Asian markets are doing this Thursday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is well entrenched in positive territory in early trade, up by 1.3%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index going the other way, lower by 0.5%, as with Shanghai's Composite down sharply, down by 1.2%. Singapore's Straits Times Index is higher by 0.2%. Here at home, selling pressure persisted Wednesday, sending the PSE Index back below the 600 level. Now, the main gauge fell 0.75% to 60.83. Trading was thin, just 5 billion pesos in value turnover, with decliners outpacing advancers. Analysts blame both global trade uncertainties and local corruption headlines for the weak sentiment. Technically, the index is now flirting with support at 60.50, with stronger backing at 6,000. Resistance, meanwhile, looms near 6,200. Market watchers say volatility will likely persist until fresh cues emerge from inflation data and global economic signals. Taking a look at the PSE Index this morning, as of 10:40, the main gauge is in the green, higher by 0.4%. By 0.4%, we're back at the 6,100 level at 6109. All shares index in the green as well, higher by 0.4% to 36.77. Taking a look at the sub-indices, all are in the green except for the holding firms counter, which is down, it just has a slight downward bias. Total volume traded stands at 164 million shares, valued at 645 million pesos. So far, market breadth is positive, with 80 advancers, 62 decliners, and 45 stocks unchanged. Taking a look at the currency markets, the peso is trading at 57.30 against the greenback, unchanged from the previous close. Now, the government is weighing a radical move, the possible shutdown of the country's coal mines to speed up the shift to renewable energy. Energy Policy and Planning Director Michael Sinocruz says a study will be conducted to assess the impact on workers and host communities. But Semirara Mining, the country's biggest coal producer, warns that coal remains the backbone of the baseload supply needed to keep electricity affordable. The Consunghi-led firm adds that any phase-out will require careful planning to balance energy security with livelihoods. On another front, Asia Best Group International is beefing up its war chest, approving a 3 billion peso capital increase and a follow-on offering. In a disclosure, ABG said its authorized capital stock will rise from 600 million pesos to 3 billion pesos, subject to stockholder approval. The board also cleared a follow-on offering of 300 to 620 million shares, plus a private placement of up to 300 million unissued shares. The proceeds will fund the acquisition of Concrete Stone Corporation, Industry Movers Corporation, Kabalayan Housing Corporation, and other assets. The citizenship controversy surrounding mining tycoon Joseph C. deepens as documents now suggest his supposed Filipino parents don't even exist. As Hannah T. reports, this puts further pressure on C's claim to be a Filipino.
The parents of Joseph C., the man accused of masquerading as a Filipino, do not exist in the records of the Philippine Statistics Authority. In her privileged speech interpellation, Senator Risa Ontiveros presented documents she obtained from the PSA. C's certificate of live birth filed in 2007 claimed his mother was Aida Samson Que and his father Emilio Toledo C. The document even listed a 1964 marriage in Bataan. But when verified against the PSA database, there was no record of their birth, death, or even their marriage.
Wala pong ganyang dalawang individual, wala pong ganyang couple na ikinasal po dito sa Pilipinas, Mr. President.
The names appear only in the delayed birth registration filed by Joseph C. himself 41 years after his claimed birth date in October of 1966.
41 years? Talaga ba? Na namuhay siya di umano dito sa Pilipinas bago siya kumuha kahit ng affidavit of acknowledgement or admission of paternity at saka affidavit for delayed registration of birth.
Senate Minority Leader Tito Soto pressed the issue. If C is not a Filipino, his businesses in mining and his leadership role in global ferronickel are illegal.
At kung siya ay hindi Filipino citizen, bawal lahat yan.
Bawal po, Mr. President. Kasi hindi sa ilalim lamang ng constitutional provision on 60-40 Filipino at foreign ownership na pupwede sa mga kumpanya dito sa Pilipinas. Hanggang ngayon po, Mr. President, ang industriya ng pagmimina ay in fact nakareserba solo sa pagmamayari ng mga Pilipino.
Ontiveros earlier flagged his links to mining firms in Palawan and Surigao and his exports of nickel ore to China. The case mirrors the controversial case of Alice Guo, who earlier insisted she was a natural-born Filipino, but was earlier ruled by a court that she was undoubtedly Chinese. Senator Erwin Tulfo called C's case Alice Guo 2.0 and asked how many more like Joseph C. could be operating in the country.
Unfortunately, Mr. President, that would have to remain a very, very urgent question na may malaking at malalim na pangangamba sa ilalim nito.
Several agencies, including the Bureau of Immigration, are now reviewing C's documents, mining practices, and citizenship claims. C has an ongoing deportation case for his supposed falsification of citizenship. He was arrested at the NAIA on August 21. Hannah Tia, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. The flood control scandal is intensifying. The Bureau of Immigration has placed 35 individuals on its monitoring list. The Immigration Lookout Bulletin order signed by Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla was issued at the request of Senator Rodante Marcoleta and the Senate Blue Ribbon Oversight Office Management. Immigration officers have been directed to closely track the travel movements of these individuals to ensure that they do not evade the ongoing probe. Officials clarify this is not a travel ban, but a watch list to support the Senate investigation into questionable flood control projects. Pasig City Mayor Vico Soto is opening his own parallel probe into questionable flood control projects in the city. Within our
Nag-submit na rin po ako sa DPWH ng sulat mula sa akin, mula sa lokal na pamahalaan para sa isang Freedom of Information FOI request for documents pertaining to flood control projects within our jurisdiction.
The Pasig LGU plans to investigate more than a dozen contractors operating in the city, mirroring the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee's wider probe. Mayor Vico emphasized it is imperative not to let the issue be forgotten or buried by other matters.
Hindi pwedeng pagkatapos ng ilang buwan, tatahimik na issue, tapos magkakalimutan na tayo. Hindi pwede. Huwag tayong pumayag bilang mga mamamayang Pilipino, bilang government officials, bilang ordinaryong mamamayan, bilang media. Huwag tayong pumayag na magkalimutan tayo after 2 months, after 2 years for that matter.
Senate Minority Leader Tito Soto confirmed his nephew, Mayor Vico, may be called to testify in the Senate investigation. Mayor Vico, for his part, says he is ready to face the Senate. The National Union of Journalists of the Philippines rejects the apology of Leyte 4th District Representative Richard Gomez after he posted reporters' messages and personal numbers online. The incident comes at a time when journalists play a crucial role in uncovering irregularities in the flood control scandal.
Siguro kung titignan natin, no, ang sinabi lang naman niya, I'm sorry to all the media I have offended, no. So parang ang framing niya is parang na-offend lang siya. Well, in fact, what really happened was, it was a misappreciation of the role of media. At the same time, meron talaga siyang mga colleagues natin na potential harm, no?
The NUJP says Gomez's actions were more than a simple mistake, calling them baseless, spiteful, and a direct risk to journalists' safety. The House Ethics Committee says it is ready to process any complaints filed against the lawmaker. But for the NUJP, the matter also falls under the jurisdiction of the National Privacy Commission.
Both bodies can launch their own investigations and hold their own proceedings motu proprio, no? So, something for them to take note of this if they want to move forward with something like that.
The NUJP stressed that it is the media's job to ask questions. And with the country embroiled in the flood control scandal, they say the public deserves nothing less than full transparency. Telcos are leaning more on loyalty programs to keep customers engaged in a highly competitive market. Here's how Globe Telecom is trying to stay ahead.
Globe's 2-month celebration has officially begun. Marking the Burr months and the season of giving, Globe is celebrating the 10th anniversary of G-Day with even more rewards for customers, both online through the Globe One app and on-site nationwide.
Globe knows you and celebrates you every single day. And this also aligns with our purpose, which we always remind ourselves every single day, Red, is to uplift Filipino lives every day.
Pop-up booths will be set up in key locations including Cebu, Davao, Bacolod, Aklan, Naga, Caloocan, Dasmariñas, Tuguegarao, and Cagayan de Oro.
Each stop will be a mini celebration filled with exclusive promos, partner giveaways, and activities that turn everyday moments into something fun.
Customers can also join daily raffles until the end of October. Prizes include a 50,000 peso grocery shopping spree, 100,000 pesos in GCash, gadgets, a brand new car, a condo unit, a house and lot, and even a trip to Japan. Simply by opening the Globe One app and tapping Redeem Rewards.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he has no further message for Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Trump added that he will wait for Putin's decision as Russia continues to show little interest in ending its war with Ukraine. Trump's efforts to end the war in Ukraine has had little progress despite his meeting with Putin in Alaska last month.
UK and Vladimir Putin a 2-week deadline to agree to talks with Volodymyr Zelensky. That deadline is now nearly approached. Can you give us any indication of when you will make it?
Well, I'm having a conversation with him very shortly, and I'll know pretty much what we're going to be doing. We've taken very strong action, as you know, and in other ways we've taken very strong action. But I'll be speaking to him over the next few days, and we're going to see.
With who, sir?
I'm going to know exactly what's happening. But I'm not happy with all the people. You got 7,819 people killed last week.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he is open to meeting Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky, but only if the talks take place in Moscow. Zelensky has long pressed for a direct meeting. Putin says he is willing, but only if discussions deliver tangible results. He added that Ukraine would need to lift martial law, hold elections, and conduct a referendum on territorial questions before any progress can be made. Russia claimed to have annexed 4 Ukrainian regions in 2022, a move Kiev and most Western governments reject as an illegal land grab under a war of conquest.
Кто считает, что каждая страна имеет право выбирать.
By the way, U.S. President Donald Trump asked me to hold such a meeting. I said this is possible. Over Putin speaking in front of journalists. At the end of the day, if Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is ready, let him come to Moscow over reporter listening, and such a meeting will take place.
In other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping were overheard, not talking war or trade, but how humans could live to 150 years. During Putin's visit to China, microphones picked up snippets of their conversation. The two leaders discussed organ transplants, biotechnology, and the possibility that humans could live up to 150 years. Putin even floated the idea that eternal life could be within reach. Xi has been in power for 13 years, while Putin has led Russia for more than 2 decades.
Yes. I think the chairman spoke about it when we were walking to the parade. Oh yes, Mr. Berlusconi was actively into this topic once. The modern means of health support, medicine, even some surgeries involving organ transplantation allow the humanity to hope that the active lifespan will not be like today. It differs from country to country, but anyway, they allow to hope that the lifespan would increase considerably.
And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.